Good morning everyone, my name is Michelle, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another video. It is Saturday morning the 22nd of November. In this video we're going back to Northeast Tennessee and the case of missing then 5-year-old Summer Moon Utah Wells, who was reported missing on June 15th 2021, last seen by her brothers outside the basement door that afternoon, and who knows what happened next. The majority of people who've followed this case in the 4.5 years since Summer went missing think that the parents, Don and Candice Wells, had something to do with it. However, on November 13th this year, locals saw up to 15, according to one person, Hawkins County Sheriff's Office cars parked along Van Hill Road, which is 9.5 miles away from Summer's house. And a few days later, the news broke in the media that there had been a search of a particular property in the 3500 block of Van Hill Road. Again, this is 9.5 miles away from Summer's home. Looking at a map, it became obvious that there's only one property in the 3500 block of Van Hill Road. We've been covering it on this channel over the last few days. And then Kristen Kwan, a reporter from WCYB, confirmed the property in question was indeed the one owned by the elderly man, Paul Hill. Paul Hill is in his 80s. I don't think anybody is suggesting that Paul Hill has murdered Summer. There are a whole bunch of locals up in arms about the fact that Paul Hill has been named by WCYB. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to look at some of the things that locals have said in support of Paul Hill, and we're going to consider some other possibilities. So let's go. Before we get into the video, can I just ask, if you are not yet subscribed, please do so. I'm trying to get to 100,000 subscribers by the end of this year. I think there's just about time, possibly, if the wind is in the right direction, for me to do it. The silver play button plaque for my wall in time for Christmas. It's been my goal all year. So help me out. It's completely free at your end. If you are subscribed and you want to help the channel, then like the video and leave a comment. It helps with the algorithm. It shows YouTube that people are engaging with the video, and share my videos. And then maybe people who've never come across my channel before will find it. All right, without further ado, so these are some of the comments under Kristen Kwan's post. There are so many people in these comments who are supporting Paul Hill. I don't think personally that Paul Hill murdered Summer, and I don't think anyone is suggesting that in the media, but it is a fact and it's publicly available information. The TBI have released the fact that this property is in the 3500 block of Van Hill Road, and it's in the public domain. It's in Tennessee property records who owns that property in the 3500 block of Van Hill Road. So I don't think Kristen Kwan has done anything wrong. But it is interesting that there are a lot of people who are in support of Paul Hill. Apparently he's very well respected in his local community. He's done a lot for the community. Now, of course, sometimes people live double lives, and the most wonderful people turn out to have a really dim, dark secret. Of course, that's true. But let's not jump the gun here. All right, I think this is what people are getting at. So someone called Abby says, Paul and his wife are amazing people, amazing souls that have done so much for this community. For many, they are fed, clothed, housed and cared for. They will go above and beyond for anyone. To think our justice system decides to tear a man's life upside down and now put his family's life in harm because of some other family member who is pissed and wants to destroy him. Really? That's the first I've heard about somebody trying to destroy Paul Hill by sending law enforcement after him. Whether that's just an assumption from this poster or whether that's possibly true. If this person knew all these details and specific information, why did they wait for 4.5 years? Why did they not come forward? I think that should be why did the other family members not come forward? Why did this person not be investigated? Maybe their conscience is starting to eat them alive, which it should. But instead of being held accountable, they want to blame others. Believe their own actions are catching up with them. One thing I do know, if anything happens to Mr. Hill and his family, be ready for a fight on your hands. He will have an army to back him and stand at his side to defend his innocence. All we can do is to hope and pray for Summer. So that is pretty strong. That is strong. Again, no one is suggesting that Paul Hill murdered and then buried Summer's remains on his property. I'm certainly not suggesting that. I've said again and again in videos, this could well be that anybody connected to that property is completely innocent. It's 27 acres. 27 acres. So easily someone could have crept up onto that property and hidden evidence relating to Summer, whether it's remains or whether it's something else, clothes or whatever, on that property without the landowner or anyone connected to that property knowing about it. It is interesting, a tip came in to Jason Jensen, who's a PI in Utah, back in June, and this had come from someone in Rogersville who didn't want to go to the cops. So Jason Jensen followed it up and talked about two brothers, and it just so happens that there are two brothers who are sons of Paul Hill. But again, we don't know whether Jason Jensen's tip is even related to this. And it's also interesting that one of the sons, Frank, has a tree trimming company. And lo and behold, there was tree trimmers on Beech Creek the day that Summer disappeared, but apparently from a different company. But do they subcontract? We don't know. The maroon or red 1998 to 2000 Toyota Tacoma that was seen by a delivery person in the area, either on June 14th, the day before Summer disappeared, or June 15th, has never been found. Here's another person who's standing by the hills. I'm going to say this, everyone in this community is standing by this couple. I've known them all my life, and they have never been nothing but good to people and helped everyone that needed help. I can say this, if anyone needed anything, we could go to them and they would help. I'm getting sick of people posting his home and pictures where he lives. They are elderly, they aren't in good health, and they don't need this, all because they got a tip. I understand following up on it, but people don't know, the community and the people that live here don't know how this has affected them. I will stand on this. He has nothing to do with this, and just because that nephew of his has the same last name don't mean squat. It's all because of the last name. Okay, now the nephew that she's referring to is Fred Hill. Fred Hill, that we've talked about a lot on this channel. He is now living in Indiana with his wife, YouTuber Ziggy. Fred Hill's family had two properties on Ben Hill Road the day that Summer disappeared. 165, 167 and 207. And Fred has said a lot and conflicting stories about Summer's disappearance. Trish says, amen. They need to make Fred come back since they let him leave Tennessee and move out of state. He was a suspect. Why did they let him leave? Especially since he has blamed everyone. This makes me so mad. We know Paul personally, and yes, they are barking up the wrong tree here. Again, it doesn't mean to say that the people who belong to that property are the ones who the TBI and the FBI are looking at. It's the tip could possibly be relating to the land, not relating to the people. Notwithstanding Jason Jensen's comments, turn your brother in. This happens to a lot of cases being discussed on social media platforms, especially YouTube. People will post and say anything. It's disgusting. Even if people stop posting the location, it's public record. It is. It is public record. A lot of people in these comments blaming Don and Candice and Grandma I've seen all these comments about this couple and how good they are, but the sad fact is I'm wondering if somebody moves Summer's body onto their property later without their knowledge. They do that stuff sometimes. You read it all the time. I pray to God they don't find anything, but then at the same time I want her found so she can be laid to rest if they have done something to her. I've known Paul Hill for 40 years or longer. They are barking up the wrong tree there. You will never find better people than this family. This branch of the family might be good people, but not all of them. Wendy says, Fred heard about this from Randy, so what's up with Randy? He lives there too, right? He's one of the sons, not the one who has the tree trimming company though. Remember the turn your brother in comment from Jason Jensen. Pam says, a breakthrough after all this time is a blessing. Whoever gave the lead to law enforcement, thank you from the bottom of my heart. They say the people living at this address are good folks. That may be the case, but it certainly doesn't prevent a family member using the property for criminal activity. Absolutely. Though, if any family knew of this activity, then they are just as bad as the criminals, simply for not reporting it. What makes people an accessory after the fact? Exactly. By the looks of all the comments, the older gentleman and his wife are good and caring people. So much they will help many in their community, whether it's food help, housing, whatever they can provide, they give. I see people like this being taken advantage of also. Owning property doesn't make you guilty of the disappearance of a child. If anything, perhaps someone used their property to cover their involvement. Yes, stop and think. No one will bother these people because they are good people, yeah. An elderly couple in good standing in the community, like helpful people, could be taken advantage of and their property used without their knowledge. 27 acres. You can't get your eyes on 27 acres like 24/7, can you? So it could be possible that evidence is there because Paul Hill is a good person and no one would think to look there. And clearly, up until a few days ago, no one thought to look there. So, yeah. I think it's utter BS to plaster their name and address all over social media just so people can play detective. Yeah, but it is public record, so it's a TBI who released that this property was in the 3500 block of Van Hill Road, and the rest you can work out for yourself. Where are you reading the mother is missing to? She's not. Candice is not missing. Well, the pigs and hogs made away with that poor baby girl Summer. They'll never find anything that belonged to Summer. Look, they do keep hogs on that property, and again, it could well be that someone has done away with Summer's remains unbeknownst to Paul. If that's the case, then what some people have said about trucks carrying dirt away from that property could well be connected to that kind of suggestion, which is horrible. I mean, look, there are people thinking along the lines of this case. This is my playlist from Crime Story Sunday, the series I used to do on my other channel, Michelle Walks. It's one of the first ones I did. Hold on. There. Willie Picton, who was a serial killer, and he would feed the remains of his victims to his pigs. People are thinking along those lines, and it's valid. It's very valid. However, again, no one is suggesting that Paul Hill fed Summer's remains to his pigs. Someone could have done this without his knowledge, including his two sons. I mean, you know, how good are his two sons? They appear to be in good standing in the law. I looked at criminal records in Greene County, and they're in good standing, apart from things like speeding and seatbelts and stuff like that. Why did they not search the area when Summer went missing? Because it's 9.5 miles away. So if they only recently got the tip, and again, the people at that property are in good standing, then there's no reason for law enforcement to have gone that far out. Harold says, the search happened on Thursday the 13th. It's now Thursday the 20th. Well, it's actually Saturday the 22nd now. Where is Paul? At home. If this search would have revealed anything, he'd be in custody today, but he's not. Quit slandering a good man and woman's name when everyone is just guessing about things. Leave the detective work to detectives and pray over this horrific situation. Ask any of the locals what kind of people they are. P.S. I also know he was at the church I pastor this past Sunday morning and was even praying for the people that was slandering him. Look, leave Paul Hill out of it. Just because the Hill name is known because of Fred Hill, just because his property's been searched, doesn't mean to say he had anything to do with it. Let's be very, very, very clear. If you can take anything away from this video, that's the thing you need to take away. Searching 27 acres is going to take more than one day. And if they've taken things like dirt away, then obviously it's for good reason. It's very similar to the Michael Vaughan case. Do you remember? They got a tip from Stacey Wanderer. This has all come out recently with the arrest of Stacey and Sarah Wanderer. The Michael Vaughan case from Fruitland, Idaho. Little 5-year-old boy who went missing there and was abducted. Most probably by the 4 suspects that were named in November of 2022, over a year after Michael went missing, although the Wanderers had been on the cops' radar almost from day one. Stacey Wanderer started to talk, saying that Michael had been buried in his backyard. They got ground-penetrating radar out, found anomalies underground, so they brought the cadaver dogs in. 5 different cadaver dogs alerted in that location that Stacey Wanderer directed them to, but Michael's remains were not there. Likely he'd been moved. Something similar could have happened here. They found anomalies, they've had hits from cadaver dogs, therefore they started to dig. But if Summer had been moved, or the hogs had something to do with it, then you're basically looking for fragments of evidence. And there's no reason to arrest Paul Hill or his wife or any of his sons unless you can directly link the people to the crime. Even if they find evidence on his property, doesn't mean to say they're just going to instantly arrest the people on the property. They're not. There has to be a link. And the only way you can get that link is if someone talks. I think, at this stage. There just could be evidence on his property. I don't think anyone is suggesting these people are involved. Exactly. In other words, dead lead because these people seem to be good people from reading others' comments. Not necessarily. It's not necessarily a dead lead. But it may not lead to any arrests. Because they've got to link the people who left Summer's remains there to the crime itself. It's not just about the land that it was found on. That's true as well, though. Good people do bad things sometimes or turn a blind eye. Or because they're elderly and they're good people and they're taken advantage of. Could be absolutely the case. Absolutely the case. Someone called Brad Hill says, Paul is my papa's brother. Goes to church with us a lot. He's a wonderful human being. He got saved in a barn behind his home in 2008. I'm 100% satisfied that he has nothing to do with this. I pray people don't jump to conclusions and pester him about it. Paul is an amazing man. They're barking up the wrong tree. They need to make Fred come back to Tennessee. Yeah. Fred Hill's Paul's nephew. They let him leave the state. He's been a suspect since day one. I don't know that he's been a suspect, but a person of interest, certainly. Then again, Sheriff Ronald Lawson says everyone is a suspect. The difference between the two, Paul is a God-fearing man and Fred is a junkie. What is the link to Summer? What makes him a suspect? Well, lived on Ben Hill Road, knew the Wells, made loads of stories up. Uncle Paul has got nothing to do with him or them, including his nephew Fred, because of the drug situation that came with, I assume that's Fred and the Wells. Oh wow. The ones that don't know Paul is assuming all kinds of crap. Yeah, they are. And saying that he's an SO. He's not. The SO that is registered in Tennessee with a similar name, Lloyd Paul Hill, lives in Kentucky, and he is not the elderly gentleman who lives in the 3500 block of Van Hill Road. Let's be very, very, very clear. Very clear. Alright guys, interesting reading, but let me know your thoughts in the comments and I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys. Now she's gonna run off with it.